the highest scoring game week on average, and then whack, we're into yet another double game week. One would say London is cooling. We're not just two London sides having a double game week, but it also is derbies galore. Speaking of fantasy discussion galore, it is all happening on the FPL Addicts podcast. Fantasy managers, welcome to the Game Week 35 edition of the FPL Addicts podcast. And wow, that was a madhouse of a Game Week 34 with a high score being well over 200. A high-flying Eagle managing to score 4 goals and an assist, which is why I'm representing Palace. But we also have another guest tonight who also works for one of the major companies in the UK, newspaper-wise, it being The Sun, and is about to start as social media manager. Along with that, he is a Chelsea enthusiast and as well Fantasy Premier League. Lloyd Canfield, welcome to the Addicts podcast. How are we today on this fine Friday? It looks sunny out there too.
I'm all right. It is sunny in the UK for once. Could have been better result for Chelsea in the week. I was there. The less said about that, probably the better. But I am well. The weather is well ahead of a brilliant game week 35 we've got ahead of us. So let's see how we do.
It was very intriguing. Just to briefly touch on, what did you get out of that game for Chelsea away at Arsenal? It was 5-0. It looked okay up until half time.
It was going all right until half time. I thought, from a Chelsea perspective, I thought Marc Cucurella was actually really good in the first half. We had chances. Nicolas Jackson had chances as per usual. Failed to convert them as per usual. But yeah, we had chances. We were right in the first half. The second half, again, the less said about that, the better. We just capitulated at the back. The Arsenal pressure really got to them, I think. Missing Cole Palmer was a massive miss for Chelsea, a massive loss. So yeah, he's back this week. Let's see if we can turn it around. We've got a couple big games coming up, and we're still chasing the European spot. So let's see if we can get over that and turn it back around.
Spot on there, indeed, especially a big game against their neighbours in Tottenham Hotspur, in which you had a very good result in the reverse fixture 4-1. Do you expect it to be somewhat of a similar outcome, or is it going to be a lot harder than you may think?
I think it will be similar. I think Chelsea against Tottenham in recent years has been the best Premier League fixture, in my opinion. It seems to always deliver goals, drama, moments, cards, the lot. So I reckon this one will be no different. I think both teams have got a lot to prove. It's a London derby. They're always feisty, especially if Arsenal do come out on top against Tottenham at the weekend. They're not going to want to lose another London derby in the space of a week or so. So yeah, I think it'll be a good game. Chelsea got a lot to prove, and they're still chasing that Europa Conference or Europa League spot. And a win over Tottenham would be massive for our season. So let's see how it goes.
As always, the community plays an integral role for how sometimes this podcast is driven. We want to say hello to you, Ryan. Thank you for tuning in from the get-go. It was a pleasure to join alongside you for the Scoutcast for Fantasy Football Scout the Game Week installment, which will be out later today. Our number one fan, a Fulham enthusiast, speaking about another London club, Colin Buglet. Thanks very much for tuning in. Like he usually does. It's a certainty week on week. Lloyd, I think it's well suited now to go over the game week that was, and certainly one to remember for managers. Lloyd, was it a game week to remember for you?
Well, when you look at a high score of over 200 points, I wouldn't say I was anywhere close to that. A huge part of my team for the whole season really has been the Chelsea players. So to not have Cole Palmer or Malo Gusto feature was a massive loss for my team. I think I ended up with 89 points. I did have a few good players in there. Brian Mbuemo for me was a good pick that I don't think too many people had. And I did thankfully in one way, I did have Ben White, although it was a shame to see him score a brace against my own team. But yeah, Ben White was brilliant for me. I did have Foden, I did have Saka.
Do you have the team in its all?
Yeah, I can show you my team.
To those that are tuning in early, thank you once again. We've got so much to discuss as well. Feel free to fire your questions as they come through. We've also got Lloyd's side here. So 89 points, looked good, as mentioned. Was Ben White the one that I'd say impressed you the most, or was there another asset that surprised you?
I think Ben White probably, in terms of points compared to what he would usually be scoring, Ben White has to be the standout player. But I think the most impressive player for me in the Premier League this season has been Phil Foden. Another 16-point return this week against Brighton, and he's just such a quality player. I think for England going ahead with the Euros as well, he's going to play an integral part in that.
Yeah, I mean, he scored a brace in the first half. It looked relatively easy for Man City as well. I just feel that De Zerbi had no answers, but a great get for Phil Foden, and that is a massive win for non-free hitters as well. Before we swerve into other sides, was there an asset that just brought so much disappointment into your team and you just expected a lot more? Was it the Salah?
It's got to be Mohamed Salah as my captain, isn't it? Yeah, just a huge disappointment. He hasn't. At times, he seems to obviously come through massively for me and my fantasy team, but other times when he doesn't perform, it is a real letdown. Darwin Núñez as well, not getting quite the amount of points that I was hoping for, and then Palmer and Gusto obviously not playing at all. They could have played a big part of my team, but both missing out is a real shame.
Lloyd, what is your current overall rank at the moment, and what is the goal you'd like to get to at the end of season?
So my current overall rank is 903,000, which at one point earlier in the season I was in the top 10k and then fell off massively. It seemed like a lot of people seemed to start using their chips, and I was holding off, and then people started overtaking me and rapidly overtaking me, and then I haven't really caught up since then. So hopefully my wild card this week will help me catch up a bit, but we'll see if it does or not. I would hope for around, if I can get it right, I think top 500k would be nice.
Geez, that's a good push, but I think it's important for managers to push themselves, make them good positions, a slice of luck along the way too. Now, I heard just before we went on there that there is a little wager that goes within your company as well in terms of your own mini league. What is the commitment, or should I say deed, that is to avoid?
So we did have a league last season that I'm not taking part in anymore, thankfully, which was the bottom two people in the league would have to buy a meal for everyone else in the league. At one point last season, I was bottom of the league, so it was looking like that was going to cost me a fair bit of money. Eating out anywhere in the UK is quite expensive these days. Yeah, so I was bottom of the league and managed to finish, I think, third or fourth from the bottom, so I didn't end up paying it. But this year, I'm not in that league. I am still in a work league. Few of them have got. I'm in a few work leagues. A few of them have got money on the line where if you win, you get get a fairly hefty amount, but it's not looking like I'm going to win either of those. I'm doing all right, but
Yeah.
I think being a journalist, there's quite a lot of pride at stake in your sporting knowledge when you're among 30, 40 other sports journalists. So you want to be as high up as you can.
That's fair enough. Thank you, Lloyd, for showing us your side for game week 34. Let's hope for some massive scores from you within the last 4 game weeks of the season. On to the podcast league, first of all, for the FPL Addicts. Now, we're going straight to the top. Not quite my side. Now, Reedy, I usually show your side, but one, unfortunately, you're unavailable for today's podcast. But also, you only scored 86. It's not out of this world fireworks type display. We're going straight to Elliot's team, who has somehow not appeared on this podcast all season. 141 points played with a free hit, with a staring of Pickford, White, Eze, Havertz. I've run out of names. Even went Brereton Diaz direction. Is there a pick here that impresses you the most? Briefly, Lloyd, on your end.
A pick?
Yeah, just a player.
The player, out of those, the player of late that has impressed me the most has got to be Jean-Philippe Mateta. He's been in such good form since he started tucking his shirt in. It seems he is turning into a new man. So maybe I'll try that one out at 5-a-side this week and see if that works for him too. Other than Mateta, Eze is brilliant as always. His performances don't always translate into fantasy points, but he is such a quality player. And Kai Havertz, it must be said, thought he was fairly poor in the first half against Chelsea. Watching it in the flesh, but second half he showed up. He finished off the chances that Nicolas Jackson couldn't finish in the first half, and he's in a brilliant run of form. It's a shame to say that it didn't work out from a Chelsea point of view. A lot of the fans are very split on him. Everyone can see the talent that he's got. It just didn't work out for him at Chelsea, and he punished them in the week.
Yeah, I mean, he did score the winning Champions League goal away at Porto as well. So
yeah,
that's one way to leave a mark for sure. Elliot doing quite well, just outside the top 400k. Now we'll go briefly into my side. Not quite the 141, but you mentioned him just then, Lloyd, the mighty Jean-Philippe Mateta. It's heroic stuff of 4 goals and an assist. I ended up getting 125 points. And Pickford, Gabriel doing well. Munoz got a clean sheet in the second game. Eze, Havertz. I mean, everything's just so good, except for Liverpool assets. It just had to be genuine party poopers. Nicolas on the bench, who got 7 points. But outside of that, I felt I probably made the right call in terms of fielding the correct players and benching the appropriate players too. Now up to 32k, which is very equal in terms of the highest I've ever been for 8 seasons of playing FPL. Delirium, that's what it is. But 4 game weeks to go. I can't lie, Lloyd. I don't get nervous, but I'm starting to feel a little bit shaky about this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, mate. It's crazy stuff. We've got 2 sides that have a double game week. We've got 6 coming up in double game week 37. We're going to discuss a lot of players in due course, like throughout today's pod. But has there been a player who... Cole Palmer may be the obvious one, but is there another one that has impressed you from a fantasy perspective as well? I know Phil Foden has probably been exceptional, but is there another one that has stood out?
From a fantasy perspective,
is it an Ollie Watkins type? Is it Anthony Gordon?
I feel like it's got to be Ollie Watkins, hasn't it? Aside, obviously, my first choice would have been Cole Palmer, but aside from him, I think you've got to look at Ollie Watkins. He's been absolutely sublime. I mean, considering he doesn't even take penalties for Villa, the amount of goals and assists he's contributed, and against the big teams as well, he seems to always show up against the big teams, which is huge for fantasy managers who see a game, perhaps Villa against Man United or Villa against Liverpool, and you think, well, maybe I'll take my Villa assets out for that game. But with Ollie Watkins, you know you can leave him in. You know he's going to put in a good performance. Even if he doesn't score, he still seems to end up in the points somehow. And aside from that, think someone who's gone a bit, not necessarily under the radar from a fantasy perspective, but from a Chelsea point of view, I think it's got to be Malo Gusto, who's been brilliant in an FPL sense for me. Chelsea not the best at keeping clean sheets this season, but from an attacking point of view, I think he's been really good going forwards. Looks dangerous when he goes forwards and has swept up a few bonus points when Chelsea do perform well this season as well.
I think that's a great shout on Malo Gusto, especially how attractive his price tag is, being a budget enabler. Reece James being out for the season is not just unfortunate for him because he was an absolute fantasy gem when he could play 2 seasons back, but I think Gusto playing a somewhat, you would have a better reading on it. Is it a similar role to Reece James and Malo Gusto one?
It's a similar role. It's pretty much the same role. I think he's probably just not as good, to be honest. I think Malo Gusto is a quality player in his own sense. He's just not Reece James. I think Reece James, when he's fit, is the best right back in the Premier League. I think he can do everything Trent can do going forwards, and he can do everything Kyle Walker can do the other way. I think when he's fit and when he's firing on his day, if you will, is the best right back in the Premier League from a fantasy perspective and a footballing perspective. So yeah, not having him as an option this season has been massive for Pochettino and for all the fantasy managers that would like to have him in their team. But hopefully next season, he's back in training this week. I doubt we'll see him properly before the end of the season, but back in training this week. Hopefully he gets a good summer under his belt. He won't be going to the Euros, I don't think. Hopefully a good summer under his belt, and next season we might see him back to his best.
Great takes all round. Public League, very quickly. Now, there has been some big rank changes. Jojo's been leading this league for about 14 game weeks, and now she's been plummeted to third with a mere score of 85 points. And Geordie Wilson now leads it with 1 point over Ian Waitley. We'll be keeping up to date with this through every game week until the end of season of such. Back to assets very briefly, Lloyd. Has there been someone that has disappointed you the most?
Someone who I feel like did let me down recently was Ivan Toney. I had a lot of faith in him when he was coming back. When he made that return, especially when he scored that first goal, I thought, this is it, Ivan Toney's back. He's going to be a big scorer for the next few weeks, probably until the end of the season, really. And brought him back into my team, had him for the first week where he scored, and then since then he has failed to light up the league at all, really. I'm wondering now, he's been injured for the last few weeks. Part of me wonders if Brentford are kind of protecting him for a sale in the summer, if they know they're pretty much safe now. They know that they'll get a big fee for him in the summer, and if he's not fit, that won't materialise. So he's let me down in a sense, and the other one probably Nunes, just because I seem to get Nunes every time he can't shoot, and every time I don't have him, he seems to score, and everyone brings him back in. So he would be the other one for me that has probably cost me a lot of points.
We do have a couple of questions we've got to attend to, but just quickly on the Women's League. And yes, yet again, Jojo has lost her lead. It's now Julie Savic who leads now by 24 points, and that's a big credit for her 134-point double game week 34 score. We've got some interesting conundrums here. Colm with the first one, as the upside is usually with a forward-thinking assets, which I tend to agree. If you want to make your early transfers or potentially take hits for the last 4 game weeks of the season, I think attack is where it's at, because with defense, you're not sure if you'll be able to get those points back in time. In addition, the trustworthy assets are, well, not probably Arsenal this season, but in general, within the last few, it's been Man City. But the question is always, who can we trust in terms of constantly playing in that City defence outside of Edison. I'm looking at a -4 of Darwin, Salah, and Saka out. We've spoken about what Darwin just touched on from Lloyd just before, and Salah, who, he's just been a grumpy bum for a lot of managers, out for Højlund/Watkins, Gordon, and De Bruyne. Do you like that -4? Do you have much of a say on that? What's your take, if you have one?
I'm not against that at all, personally. Yeah. I do massively agree with the fact that it's time to take risks. I think it's time to have a bit of fun as we get towards the end of the season. If you've got something on the line, maybe you need to get out of that tricky position. And I think Højlund especially is a great option towards the end of the season. I was looking at him personally. I was looking at changing. So in my wildcard team, which we'll see coming up, I've got Bruno Fernandes and Erling Haaland. And I was considering a change of Bruno Fernandes and Erling Haaland to Rasmus Højlund and Kevin De Bruyne. So I'm not against that at all. I think that's probably a great shout. And I do really like the pick of Højlund. I think he's got it in him to turn it around at the end of the season.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree. It was just waiting for him to score. But now he's scored, I think he might go on a purple patch all of a sudden, as we saw from Boxing Day up until the start of February. And 3 hits in game week 38. It's good because you can get players tailored to a really good fixture that they may have. But it's just rotation in that last game week, especially for someone that have nothing to play for.
I'm not sure about a free hit in 38. I have already used my free hit. I don't think I did particularly well on it, but I think if you're gonna free hit, I think I would just go before 38. I think it's too much of a risk of rotation, especially if City, for example, or Arsenal have got the league wrapped up by that final game week, then you don't know who's going to play. And the same for a lot of the teams in and around the middle of the table, the teams that are safe from relegation. They'll just be looking for a chance to give a few minutes to those that have not performed massively throughout the season, have not played massive amounts of minutes. So I think you're looking at a big rotation risk in 38 if you were to free hit them.
Next question, and first of all, thank you very much, Oscar, for tuning in for the first time to the Addicts podcast. FPL vocal. Jackson will probably be the next disappointment. I mean, he could well be, but when he turns on his day, he's absolute gold, isn't he, Lloyd? What's your prospects for Nicolas Jackson for the last, we should say 6 matches, because Chelsea have 2 double game weeks within the next 3 game weeks.
We do indeed. With Jackson, you just don't know. I mean, if we look at the fixtures, they've got Villa and Spurs coming up in the next double game week. Last time, I believe it was 1 point against Villa, and then he scored probably the worst hat-trick of the season, which bagged him 16 points against Spurs last time out. So it's a tough one with Jackson because he can turn it on and he can get you those double-figure hauls, but he can also, as we saw against Arsenal in the week, be quite the opposite. So I will have Jackson in my team. As a Chelsea fan, I just think I've got to back him. So many games coming up, more than anyone else in the next remaining game weeks. And I think you've just got to take a risk on him. I think he's the type of player that can turn up, similar to what we were saying kind of about Núñez. He can turn it on at any given point. And I think he's been a better performer than Núñez. If you had Liverpool with the same fixtures as what Chelsea have got, I think everyone would be going with Núñez in the team. So I don't see why they would go without Jackson when he's performed better this season, in my opinion. So yeah, I would have Jackson. You never know, he might be the next disappointment. He probably will be in at least one of the games. But hopefully he can bag some points for my team and you guys as well.
Last one before we get to we'll go to fixtures and men transfers, but well before that, still got him in the wild card, but wouldn't surprise me if Watkins outscores him with 2 less games. This is a very interesting debate because it seems that when people have Watkins in their side, they feel comfortable knowing that this guy's consistent and I can rely on him. But it's just, is one game enough as opposed to another game as opposed for Nicolas Jackson, who's got 2 and 5. Do you see Watkins still carrying on his scoring form until the end?
I think he will. But something tells me he's not going to score against Chelsea. I don't know what it is. I think he scored in his last two games against Chelsea. No, I'm fairly sure no player has scored 3 times in a row against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. So we'll see if he can break that record. But I personally don't think he's going to score against Chelsea. That might come back to bite me. I also won't have him in my team, so I'm hoping for the best really with Watkins. But as it goes towards the end of the season, he's a fantastic player. I'm sure he will score a few more goals at least, probably more than what Nicolas Jackson will score. So we'll see how that goes.
We've touched base on a couple of fixtures, including Villa and Chelsea already, but this is a whole lot in terms of what we've got to look forward to for this coming weekend. Starting off in the east part of London with West Ham up against Liverpool. We've got a North London derby on the Sunday. We've got a London derby on the Thursday night. And we've also got another London derby at Craven Cottage. It's London derbies galore, which is what I've pretty much wrote down on the bottom of my handle here. Lloyd, a particular standout fixture in your eyes from a fantasy perspective, but it could also be mixed in with what's at stake, whether it's title or relegation.
A standout fixture, you can't look any further really than the North London derby on Sunday, can you? I mean, a lot of people are going to have those. From a fantasy point of view, I guess it's interesting that a lot of people are going to have Spurs Assets in the next few weeks, as opposed to Arsenal Assets, who have got to be the favourites for that game. But with a North London derby, you never know. I mean, it's the likes of Son who can pop up with a hat trick in these big games, and you never know. I mean, North London derbies, they throw up surprises, they throw up rivalry, and we'll see how they get on. But I think that's got to be the standout fixture for this week.
I genuinely 100% agree. If you weren't going to say it, I was going to say that too. I think for managers holding Arsenal assets down back too, plus for Spurs, managers investing in them on a wild card, how deep do you go with them? Is it just the one, or do you go triple up, all cards go game busters? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think, look, if I really had to pick another one, I actually think it might be Chelsea Spurs, mainly because of the double game week. And it's a long wait from Sunday till Thursday. The game week hasn't even concluded. And you're just waiting for that game all week, which is, of course, it's got Champions League, but also not Europa League, but it does, but all the Premier League sides are out. It's a Conference League for Aston Villa, who are in their semi-final too. I think it's on the same night as well. But yeah, there's some cracking games, 3 London derbies, the North London one. Spurs have got to play all of the title contending sides. Liverpool still being one is questionable now after their 2-0 defeat at Goodison Park. But Man City still got to go away at Spurs in game week 37. Then Spurs away at Anfield in game week 36. I forgot that's not actually a double. It's just a regular game week. And then Arsenal on Sunday. In terms of transfer traffic, we go to the top 5. And looking at this list, the top 5 transfers out: Salah, Haaland, Darwin, Saka, Diaz. And then for the transfers in, Alexander Isak up the top, followed by Son, Bruno Fernandes, Phil Foden. And he's already been mentioned plenty of times, and rightly so, on this Addicts podcast installment, Nicolas Jackson. Lloyd, looking at the transfer trends, are any of these names surprising, or is it all making sense?
I don't think they're too surprising, really. Haaland out maybe shocks me a little bit, just because I think going towards the end of the season, this week, I think he's not going to be in most people's teams. But going forwards for the rest of the season, I wonder if that's a bit of a spur of the moment decision to get rid of Haaland this week, because I think following on from this week, he's going to go back to being one of the top picks, and it wouldn't surprise me if next week he's in the top transfers in for the game week again. So I think Haaland out surprises me a little bit. The rest of them not really. Arsenal and Liverpool assets are going to be on the way out. A lot of people using wildcard this week, which is probably where most of the top transfers in come from as well. On the top transfers in, I think Nicolas Jackson again is maybe surprising for some, given his hit and miss form this season. But he's proved that with the amount of games left, he can definitely perform in those. And worth mentioning as well that now he's shaved off all his hair, maybe we'll see the best version of Nicolas Jackson when he's bald.
Yeah, I'm pretty much spot on with all of them, especially the Haaland point. It probably is a bit. I'm not sure if it's overreactionary or it's justified, because I feel those on wildcard now, there's more degree in terms of potentially getting rid. But if you're not on a wildcard and you're building for the amount of double game week players, you don't really want to get rid of them unless you really have to. For example, Destiny Udogie for Tottenham, knowing that he is out for the rest of the season, which is unfortunate in his sake. But that's how I see it. Arsenal, Liverpool, you did touch on. I think it's time to discuss them now. How much in terms of the assets from both of those sides, do we get rid of heading into the last 4 game weeks?
I think it depends massively, I think, on if you're taking hits or if you're using your wild card. I think personally I'll have probably one from both, from Arsenal and Liverpool. Not one each, just one from both teams. I think it's important maybe to keep. I would prioritise an Arsenal more than a Liverpool personally. I think just being in that title race, I think we could well see Liverpool drop out of it relatively soon, and Arsenal probably will keep pushing for the title towards the end of the season. So Arsenal as well got quite a good fixture in 36, I believe.
At home to Bournemouth, yeah. And then
so that could be worth keeping them in for that, even if it's just one that you're going to kind of sub in for that week. But yeah, I think maybe not get rid of all the Arsenal ones. Liverpool I wouldn't be hanging on to personally. But yeah, I think they could still play a good part in the end of the season run-in. We shall see if they do or not.
I'm in full agreement with you for Liverpool. I had to think about, especially for a side that I have, is that the only reason I probably consider keeping Salah is how often you're going to captain him. However, for this coming game week, you've got Chelsea and Spurs who both double. So Son and Palmer are probably going to dominate the armband for a lot of managers. Game week 36 at home to Spurs. City are at home to Wolves. You probably might want to go there. Chelsea are at home to West Ham. You see how good Cole Palmer is at home. I just feel the statement for captaining the Egyptian for the rest of the season is now diminished because of his form, but also the fixtures. I think he's fixture proof, and I think he will probably score against Spurs and maybe West Ham. But the way they're going, I'm not sure how much confidence you can install in them. Arsenal assets, I agree with you, complete different story. If you're tripled up, I would reduce it to being double, either, for example, a popular asset, Bukayo Saka plus a defender, or just a double Arsenal defence. But it's a bit risky in terms of whether you want to field him, bench him, or one bench, one field for a North London derby, because you expect there to be goals. The way Postecoglou plays, Spurs pretty much score goals every game. I think they've gone 36 games in a row scoring a goal. That's how I probably see it. Are they, for Arsenal assets, probably not Liverpool, are they worth holding on for the bench boost, do you feel, for an away trip to Old Trafford? Or do you reckon it might be time to get rid just before?
I again would actually get rid. I think an away trip for Liverpool at Old Trafford is not easy, as we saw in the Cup earlier this season. And I think it's going to depend a lot on where Liverpool stand. If there's still a chance of Liverpool winning the title, it's going to be, they're going to go for it. And in that case, then if we get to that point and they're still chasing the title, then I would say it's worth keeping one in for the bench boost, for sure. But if we get to that stage and they're no longer in the title race, I would still favour a Man United asset in that sense, maybe a Bruno Fernandes, because they're still going to be in and around Chelsea and Newcastle, hopefully, by that point, for the European places. So they're still going to be gunning for it every game. They've been inconsistent at the best of times this season, Man United, but I reckon they'll show up for that game. It's a big game, and I think the likes of Bruno Fernandes could be in the points for that game too.
I'm even as an Arsenal supporter, I'm in full agreement with you. I think it could well be a goal fest, and I think a North London derby is the hardest of the last 4 games Arsenal have, followed by Old Trafford, and then you probably go Bournemouth, Everton. Take your pick. Cole's got an interesting shout here. Doesn't have a double anymore. Reguilon for Brentford, and they do have a good fixture run. I've completely been ignoring sides that don't have doubles anymore. Majority of them, including the Bees. So Everton away from home, Fulham up home, Bournemouth away, Newcastle at home. I mean, I know you probably wouldn't go for it on a wild card, but is there merit for going for a Brentford defender? Even Reguilon, who's actually been in good form, to be honest. He's had, 24 points within the last 3 game weeks.
Reguilon has been in good form, without a doubt, but personally, I still wouldn't be going with him for the rest of the season. Everton away is by far from an easy fixture. It might show up as green on the FPL fantasy tracker, where it shows you how easy the games are. The difficulty rating shows up as green on there, but Everton away is not an easy fixture, especially for a team like Brentford. Everton will be looking to really secure their stability in the league, so I don't think that's an easy game at all. Fulham have shown that they can be dangerous. I don't think you're going to be looking at an awful lot of clean sheets for Reguilon. Can perform going forwards, but again, I think there's better options personally for a similar budget as well.
Full agreement. Hit it to a T there. Gary, another regular weekly person that tunes in, thank you once again. And wildcard is activated, similar to a lot of managers in this boat that kind of need to use their chips now or never. Spurs Assets, I think it's worth talking about now, because I think a top transfer target would be Heung-min Son, in which he's an integral part of a template that has been formed within amongst wildcard managers especially, but probably for midfield. It's probably going to be one of those 5 are going to be in a lot of teams. Outside of him, is it worth going for a Spurs defender or maybe a second attacker in midfield, or even up front with Timo Werner?
I personally, I mean, we'll see my team shortly, but personally, I'd avoid Timo Werner. He's been rotated, he's been inconsistent, misses easy chances, as he did for Chelsea as well. I do think there's a player in there somewhere. He can score goals, but I don't think he's consistent enough to back him for double game weeks. Even the likes of Nicolas Jackson has been significantly better than him this season, in my opinion. Spurs defence is an interesting one, because something I was looking at was Porro and Vicario. Porro, I believe, has got the most shots for a defender in the Premier League this season, which proves he does get forwards, he does attack. Spurs, very attacking team, play a high line as well. But that often does leave them vulnerable defensively. I think Chelsea and Arsenal will both score against Spurs. So I would probably actually go with one defensive option. I'm not sure if you would choose Porro or Vicario in goal. Probably Porro, I think, just because they have that attacking threat, and they're probably going to concede either way, I think. So I'd go with one defensive option from Spurs. I would go with the triple up, and I would actually choose another midfield option. Maybe we'll have a look into who that is when we get onto my wildcard team shortly.
I think it's a really good point on Porro and Vicario, especially for just defensive options in general. Porro being I think he's right up there in terms of the top 3 options. But I think a second one for me, who hasn't been mentioned yet, 11 returns in the last 14 game weeks and at a decent budget. It's just a matter of if he starts. But when he does start, he's similar to the Leandro Trossard role at Arsenal. When he's on, he makes a good impact. Brennan Johnson at 5.8 million. I think it's a good pick and owned it by just 1%. I think he could do quite well from the double game week. Arsenal might be tough, but he could get an assist. I think a Chelsea game will suit him. That's if Spurs are able to get their scoring account open. But if they're down to 9 men by half-time, probably not, as we saw earlier in the season. The question is with Brennan Johnson, it's not him. It's just more, where's he going to fit into this midfield template that wildcard managers are about to establish? It's likely to be forecasted as Son, Fernandes, Palmer, Foden. I can't believe I just had a mind blow. Yeah, Gordon. Yeah. It's going to be hard to break into that fold of 5-star midfield.
It's going to be tough. I think he's a viable option. I mean, we'll see where he fits into my team, if he fits into my team.
Big time. Wolves assets quickly. Now, no wildcarders would probably remove them. They're at home to Luton, in which Luton have conceded the most goals away from home of any side. I think in terms of game week 35 teams, Wolves could actually thrive quite well this weekend. A lot of people are still holding on to Aït-Nouri. You, for example, field or bench him over, for example, an Arsenal defender. How much confidence do we have him now that He-Chan is back and he's probably being deployed back to his usual position at left back? What's your take on Wolves assets heading into this game week?
I think I agree in the sense if you're a wildcard manager, you're probably taking them out. But I actually think Luton are going to get a result at Wolves.
Okay.
If I was looking at the fixtures and one of them was going to shock you, I guess, I think I would actually go for Luton getting a result at Wolves. They are fighting to stay in the league. Wolves have nothing really to play for at this point in the season. And on paper, it's a tough one because on paper you would expect Wolves to win. You'd probably expect a clean sheet if you've got the likes of Aït-Nouri in your team. But I just think Luton are going to go for it, and part of me just feels like they're going to get a result this weekend. Maybe don't listen to my advice 100% on that one, but it's what I'm feeling, and I reckon Luton could pull it off.
We've seen this season in the Premier League, upsets can genuinely happen anywhere. There have been the most goals scored of any Premier League campaign. I'm not talking about Luton now. I'm talking about just the season in general with 1,089 goals. I'm including the goals scored from the Brighton-Man City game. It's quite ridiculous. It could well be a 4-2 type game where Luton win. We shall see. Last but not least, in terms of the discussion, before we get to Lloyd's take on this, because it's quite important for him, community members, whoever's tuning in, if you've got any discussion points we'd like to discuss, honestly, fire them away. But Lloyd, you're going to take a floor on this. The best Chelsea assets for double game week 35/37. One has already been mentioned a fair bit. Is he within your thinking still?
He is indeed. I think the two obvious ones are Nicolas Jackson and Cole Palmer. I think they'll be in the majority of teams this week. Cole Palmer, I don't think you can go without. He is back in training. He will likely start against Villa and against Spurs, providing he doesn't pick up any injuries. Jackson, again, we have no one else who we can play at the front, to be quite honest. So Jackson is likely to be starting, and Nkunku is back in partial team training, but he's not likely to be fit in order to return for Villa or Spurs. He might play a few minutes, but it's unlikely. So I think Jackson is going to be the starting striker. And Chelsea have been in a good vein of form, actually getting goals apart from the Arsenal game. So I think Jackson and Palmer are the obvious choices. And then you're looking probably at a defensive option with the amount of players you'll want from other teams. You're probably looking at either Petrovic, Malo Gusto will be the most popular options. Malo Gusto is still returning from an injury. I don't necessarily think he's going to be in the team against Villa, maybe against Spurs the following week, but I don't think he'll be in the team against Villa. So I would actually avoid Malo Gusto, which is probably controversial for a lot of people. I reckon a lot of people have him in their teams and they'll be disappointed when he doesn't play against Villa. Petrovic is a very popular option. Has been a bit hit and miss this season, and it's surprising to me that he's such a popular option after a 5-0 battering in the week. But I think he's a good goalkeeper. I think he has a chance to really perform in the next few weeks and get some points on the board. A clean sheet in either of those games would be massive for him and for the team. I think an underrated option that I haven't really seen discussed too much is Marc Cucurella.
Okay.
He comes in, I think he's either 4.2 or 4.8 million currently. But I think he, in the past few weeks, has been really solid for Chelsea. I mean, the second half against Arsenal was abysmal for the whole team, including all of the defence, the attack, everyone. But I think aside from that, the first half against Arsenal and in the previous game, he's been really solid. And I think he had chances in that Arsenal game as well to get points on the board with a cross and a shot at goal that was blocked off the line. Cucurella has been underperforming since he moved from Brighton, but we saw at Brighton he definitely has the capacity to get involved in goals. And I think if I was opting for a Chelsea defender this week as opposed to a goalkeeper, I think Marc Cucurella would be the one I'd go with.
That is a name I haven't heard for a while, and I think it's a reasonable shout. I really like the points that you've backed up with and consolidated your stance. Midfielders' perspective, I know Palmer's the obvious one. Do you feel there's going to be any love for the likes of Sterling? Conor Gallagher might be the intriguing one here, or Noni Madueke?
Of the three, I would opt for Noni Madueke, I think. Conor Gallagher, well, we've got the news, I think it was today, the news this morning, that Enzo Fernandez is out for the rest of the season. It might have been last night. Enzo Fernandez out for the rest of the season. He's been playing with a hernia injury. So I think the thing we're most likely to see is Conor Gallagher dropping into a deeper role. He has been playing the number 10 position. I think we'll see Gallagher drop deeper alongside Caicedo, which is probably going to see his goal contributions dry up a bit. You never know, maybe they'll improve, but I think Gallagher's goal contributions are likely to dry up over the next few weeks. I actually really like Noni Madueke as a player, not necessarily as an FPL option, but I think he's got the potential out of those players you mentioned. I think he's got the most potential to contribute in terms of goals, particularly. I think he's got a brilliant strike on him, and he can definitely score a goal in big games as well. So I think Madueke is an interesting option. I just think with the amount of midfielders you've got available to you in FPL this year, I think we already mentioned the likes of Brennan Johnson. I think he's going to be a more popular option. The likes of Gordon, Fernandez, all of them will be smarter options than Noni Madueke, who is probably guaranteed minutes over the next few games due to the lack of availability from other players. But I just think there's better options in him, despite him being a good player and a good option.
I actually like how there's some merit now on Madueke. I actually think he could go okay in these double game weeks. I mean, time will tell, to say the least.
Yeah.
Gary, no Liverpool for the run-in. I think we've both come to a consensus between the two. I don't think we're going to invest in any Liverpool assets at all. Lloyd, you may have answered this already. Could Jackson pull a thriller for the season's end and the double game weeks? I'm not sure if there's a bit of a Michael Jackson thriller pun going on there, Gary, but if so, you've pulled it off remarkably well. Jackson, could he really bag a hatful?
He certainly could. I don't see any reason why not. I think Didier Drogba threw his backing behind him in the week. And I think if Drogba's backing him, then why shouldn't I? I mean, I haven't scored that many goals in a Premier League season, so I think he's got it in him. Whether he'll do it or not, we shall see. But I think he's definitely got it in him to perform at the end of the season. And something about him shaving his head has just got me behind Nicolas Jackson. Like, it's such a stupid move, but I'm just backing him. Like, the head shave is such a bold move, if you will. And I reckon he's going to turn it around. He's going to pull it off. Bold Nicolas Jackson is going to be the best Premier League striker between now and the end of the season.
He could well be. And if he's spot on, we're certainly coming back to this vision. Before we preview our sides for double Game Week 35, as per usual, we give our weekly plug and mention worthy. So for our major sponsor in Bonus Bank, our sponsor Bonus Bank has a fantastic free tool to help FPL managers edge their FPL mini-leagues weekly. This tool displays the probability of clean sheets at each team and which player is likely to score. This is useful in determining the best defensive picks and consider assets likely to score this game week. The stats will be revealed via our Twitter and all of our social pages at the earliest opportunity. Lloyd, I think it's time to shine now, especially with your reveal of a wild card team for double Game Week 35. And I think a lot of community members would agree this is the best time of the year. Not quite the festive period, but here we are. Well, no, that was the point from last week, but we are finally got it.
My wild card.
And the City, I think Gary raised a really good point. Don't sleep on mate wakey. He's coming up with puns. He's doing quite well here. Lloyd, talk us through it. Community members that are looking at this, feel free to fire away your opinions. The floor, what is it? The floor is yours.
Yep. So anyone who wants to comment on my team, please let me know of any improvements. I might be a sports journalist, but I don't know everything. So yeah, my team, I got Petrovic in goal. As I mentioned, I did mention Marc Cucurella and Malo Gusto, but I think I wanted Porro more than I wanted either of them. I think Petrovic and Vicario, there won't be a massive difference between those two. They're the ones I was considering. I don't think there'll be a huge difference between them. I would just prefer Porro to Gusto or Cucurella. My substitute goalkeeper is Onana. I think they've got a good rotation between the two of them. It is worth noting, I think that Nick Pope is coming back from injury, but I'm not sure he'll be ready for their good fixture in Game Week 36. So we shall see how that goes. In defence, Porro, as I mentioned, I think is a better option than Gusto and Cucurella and has 2 double game weeks. Harry Maguire in the middle of defence. I've seen a lot of people going with Diego Dallo, but I think Maguire has the opportunity to contribute at both ends of the pitch and is a definite pick given Man United's lack of centre-backs at the moment. Fabian Schär has the ability to pull a rocket into the top of the net. Good fixture against Sheffield United, and they've got generally good fixtures until the end of the season. A solid pick for Newcastle and someone who's going to start every week. Going into midfield, Son is an obvious choice as well as Palmer. Again, 5 matches between now and the end of the season for them. Both obvious choices. Foden, again, an obvious choice as well, I think, and Bruno Fernandes, with good fixtures between now and the end of the season. And all 4 of them have shown a great ability to contribute in terms of FPL points this season. The interesting one for many of us, as we spoke about, is Brennan Johnson. I've decided for now to go against Anthony Gordon, who did a brilliant interview with Gary Neville, if you haven't seen that. But I'm going to go for Brennan Johnson. I feel like the Spurs midfield option is better than a double Spurs defensive option, which is mainly why I'm going to go for it. I think Johnson has been in great form in terms of FPL points, been in great form in real life, and is performing probably at the best I think I've seen him since he was in the Championship. So I'm going to stick with Brennan Johnson, I think, as opposed to Anthony Gordon. Only 1% owned. I'm going to take a risk there, I think. A lot of people will go with Gordon, and I don't blame you if you do go for Anthony Gordon. I think he's brilliant as well. Up front, the main man, Nicolas Jackson, who we've discussed no end. I've just boldly said that he's going to be the best striker in the Premier League until the end of the season, so I might live to regret that, but who knows. And Alexander Isak, again, with what we were saying about Anthony Gordon, they've got great fixtures. He's been in great form. He, again, is one of the best strikers in the Premier League, in my opinion. How I wish he came to Chelsea as opposed to Newcastle. But yeah, I think that's my starting team. On the bench, we've got Haaland, Gvardiol and Ben White. Ben White is the only Arsenal asset I'm keeping after he performed brilliant for me last week. They've got a brilliant fixture, I believe, against Bournemouth in game week 36 at home. And I'll be bringing him in for that one. Haaland, I think, is too soon to get rid of him. We'll want him towards the end of the season, especially if City are still chasing that title if they haven't got it secured. Haaland could be massive towards the end of the season, so he stays in my team to be bought in at any given moment, back when he's fit. And Gvardiol, just a defensive option from Manchester City, should I need it. Probably won't play an awful lot for me, but in those single game weeks, he could well get in. And that's my team.
Can I be honest, Lloyd? I absolutely love it. I think you're well set up for the last 4 game weeks of the season. In addition, I am so in love with that Brennan Johnson pick. You don't even understand. I think it's just such a cracking pick. And what I like about it is you're chasing the upside. You're going treble Spurs, treble Chelsea. You can see where your rank is and where you want to go to. I think you just have to go all guns blazing and go with the mentality of nothing to lose. And furthermore, I quite like the Harry Maguire pick. He scored against Sheffield United too. I think a goal threat could be there, and it's a good fixture at home to Burnley. I think the rest is really good too. Ben White, I mean, a lot of people are still going Gabriel Saliba, but Ben White has emerged, I think, probably as the number 1 Arsenal defender right now. Like Gvardiol, shout, he's been in great form recently, and Haaland, rightly so, keeping him on the bench. But yeah, I mean, Gary is absolutely in love with it. Good team. Going wacko for Jack. Oh, I think he's. I may have started a trend here that I have regretted. But honestly, Lloyd, I think it's absolutely spot on. And I'm very intrigued to see how you go for not just this game week, but until the end of the season. See what end of season rank you get up to. All right. In terms of my team, there's a couple of differences. But first of all, more importantly, thank you very much for showing your team there. This is my side heading into game week 35. We're not wildcarding. We wildcard in 31. 3 Chelsea, double Chelsea in defence, which I'm not overly confident about. Son there, Palmer captain, Gabriel. Salah, watch his space. Gordon, Foden. I like the Solanke pick still. I think he may just hang in there till the end of the season. And maybe from what I'm about to do, from that money being generated, could potentially be an upgrade up front. But then Leighton-Orient on the bench, still figuring out whether he goes on field over Gabriel. If you've got an opinion, Lloyd, or anyone else to just tune in, by all means, fire it away. Muniz, in case Haaland misses, I don't mind that fixture at home to Crystal Palace, to be fair. Onana's on the bench because Petrovic is playing 2 games. So Van Heck is there mainly for bench boost purposes. Lloyd, briefly, how are we looking? How does this team look in your eyes?
I like it. I would bring in a Nuri personally. I just think I don't think Gusto's going to play against Villa. I might be wrong, but I don't think he is. I haven't seen him training.
Does he play on Thursday?
I think he will play against Spurs on Thursday.
Okay.
But then you're looking at a choice really of single game week Gusto or Gabriel, and I think I prefer Nuri to either of them.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd probably bring in Nuri for Gusto, to be honest, just because I think there's more chance of Arsenal keeping a clean sheet against Spurs than there is Chelsea.
That's fair. We're on the transfers. I'm just double checking because there's been 3 times this season where it said permission denied. Now, usually at this time of the episode, I'm just going to roll and do a transfer. So Salah goes. I know, what an unfortunate way. Confirm it. And just like that, he's in the team. It's as simple as that. So Bruno's come in, and I think come next week, it's either Muniz up to an Isak and then maybe Aït-Nouri, considering he goes away to Manchester. But that's pretty much how I'm going to roll it. As I will also take your comment and opinion into consideration there for Aït-Nouri was in the side early in the week, but I just feel with Arsenal's clean sheets away from home since the start of a new year, they've been fantastic. Gabriel managed to score at Anfield. He kept a shutout at Man City. He kept a clean sheet. It would have been recently away to Wolves. They're in irresistible form at the moment, Arsenal. But I'm also taking into consideration that Spurs score a lot of goals. And I think it's a game that both sides do score.
I think it is too. And I think it's gonna be one of them games. I think
Chelsea so. Yeah. Indeed. Any Rip Mo? Yes. I mean, it's a most transferred out player. It's a sad ending. That's what it is. I hope he's not being transferred to another club during the summer. I hope he still stays at Liverpool, but it'll be very interesting to see how he shapes up under new management now that Klopp is departing. As a John David, also thank you as always for tuning in, a regular listener and consumer of the Addicts podcast. Punt on Wood for the rest of the season. Muniz to Wood free transfer. Chris Wood, I didn't really think about, but I'm going with no, reluctantly. I sort of knowing how informed Chris Wood can be, but prioritising just getting doublers in. However, there were still single gaming players that stood out last week. For example, Bruno Fernandes. Johan Vissa, I think, are one that surprised a lot of managers. Away at Luton, he managed to score a brace within the opening half. I don't think I'll go there, John David. I appreciate the comment, but it's a polite disagreement. Gary, will City or Gunners win the title? Look, I'm a bit nervous thinking about it. I think we've got to go to Tottenham and get maximum points, in my genuine opinion. And then win at Old Trafford. Man City, where could I drop points? Yeah, do you think City win the league?
I think they will win it. I just think when they get to this stage, they just don't lose it.
They don't flinch. Exactly.
And I think Arsenal will drop points against Spurs, and I think their heads will drop if they do. And I would back Man City to go all the way. But Arsenal, must be said, Arsenal, especially comparatively to this time last season, are absolutely brilliant. And I think they are deserving of a league title. But I just think City have got it. I just think you can't bet against Man City.
Yeah, I think I've got enough chink in their armour. I hope to be proven wrong, and I hope we actually get up. But in full agreement, City have just been here time and time again. And if they do somehow win it, it will be their fourth league title won in a row. Maguro, first of all, thank you very much for tuning in. I have a defence of Porro, Trent, Gabriel, Reguilon, and Gusto. Who do you reckon the three of them I should start? I wasn't really expecting this one.
Porro definitely.
Sorry?
Porro definitely should start for me.
Trent?
I think if you've got him, you start him. If you've got enough faith in him to have him in your team, then I think you start him. Gusto, I'm really not sure on. I think I'd go Porro, Trent, and Reguilon.
Okay, I would. Right, I'm going to Porro for the double. I'm going Trent. I might have to be the same. I was very close to saying Gusto, but I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think Gusto, which is strange because you want to field as many players who double as possible.
If he was going to play both games in the double, you put Gusto in. But I don't think he will. So I think you just go with whoever's got the best single game week option, which I think is probably Reguilon out of those.
That's right. I think that goes for questions for now. It is time for what some people do tune in for. It's a captain's corner. Lloyd, will be back to you very shortly. Stay on the line. Let's go through. Whizbang Fireway. Starting with Cole Palmer. away at Aston Villa, at home to Tottenham, and he's bound to be the most popular armband choice. He's had 10 goals. He scored 10 goals in his last 4 home games at the Bridge. His last blank at home coming all the way back in game week 10 against Brentford as a starter. He's got the best goals per 90 of any player with 0.86. However, he is flagged with an illness. I'm not sure if it's a cover-up or he actually starts at Villa Park, but people have got the armband on him. Let's hope so. In addition, Chelsea won at Villa Park in the Cup not long ago. Heung-min Son has a cracking second choice alternative. He scored a brace in the reverse fixture of the North London derby earlier in the season. He's blanked once at home since game week 15. In addition, prior to the Everton game where Chelsea did win 6-0, Chelsea have managed to concede 7 goals from their last 3 home matches. Newcastle double up short and sharp. Alexander Isak is the most transiting player with 387,000 managers having bought him in prior to the coming deadline. He's got a dominant run occurring at St. James Park, but who also does as well, probably the best player from his home games this season, is Anthony Gordon with his 9 goals and 11 assists coming from matches at St. James Park, which is the most of any player. Bruno Fernandes as well. He is ranked second amongst all midfielders for goals, XGI, which is expected goal involvement, big chances created, and fantasy points. He's had 7 goals and an assist in his last 6 games, which also is complemented with 3 double-digit hauls. He scored in the reverse fixture early in the season at Turf Moor. Last but not least, was mentioned briefly, doesn't have a double left, but he is the most consistent player in the game. Ollie Watkins at home to Chelsea. And since he received mass sales prior to Villa's away trip to Man City, since he's come back, he's scored 30 points in the last 3 game weeks, scored at Arsenal, scored against Brentford, and popped up with 2 assists at home to Bournemouth, highest point scorer. And he also scored in the reverse fixture, pretty well score against Chelsea. Again, that is all. It's a massive captain's call to say the least. Lloyd, you still sticking with Cole Palmer here?
I am sticking with Cole Palmer, yeah. If I had money on the line, I might go with him and Son. But I am agreeing with Gary, and I'm going for the Palmer party. I reckon he could be the man again, especially against Spurs at Stamford Bridge. It seems like the occasion is made for him. It's going to be a massive, massive game, that one. And I think Palmer is going to be the man that steals the show in that game against their high line. And yeah, I'm back in the Palmer party. I reckon he could get something against Villa. I'm not overly optimistic. I do think he'll start both games. So I think we'll be looking at good minutes for him. And I just think I'm going for vibes, basically. I'm going for Cole Palmer, cold Palmer, ice cold. So let's see how he goes. But I'll be sticking with Cole Palmer.
I think a lot of fantasy managers who've decided to go with the vibes tactic recently have reaped their rewards. For those that even backed Eze or Mateta last game week, they got massive points. Wow. And vibes fit in the category in Cole Palmer. I'm with you. I think just based on his current form, it's so hard to overlook past him right now. Cole Palmer being the captain at the moment. Lloyd, before we wrap up, just want to say thank you so much for coming on as a panel member. I think you've been exceptional with your knowledge, especially with Chelsea. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. It's a pleasure to be on, and hopefully I'll be back on next season at some point.
Yes, I would love to have you back on indeed. And Lloyd, for the listeners and people that are watching alongside, where could they find you on your socials?
They can find me on Instagram, Lloyd Canfield FC. You can see my name on the screen here, so just add an FC on the end of that. And on X or Twitter, it's just Lloyd Canfield, so I can be found anywhere on there. And if you just Google me, then you can read all my work and all my articles on Google as well. So just give me a Google and you'll see me pop up, I'm sure.
Just a like comment from Tyler. Very nice kit as well, Lloyd. What year is it for the Chelsea? Is that early 2000s?
It's 2001, the year I was born, and it's got the legend on the back.
Franco Zola. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's football heritage. I think Jose Mourinho would quote it once. So that is a cracking kit. You certainly won it in terms of your attire this evening. All I've gone for is a Crystal Palace scarf that I got before the Palace Fulham fixture on Boxing Day in 2022, which is showing a manager that got sacked only a few months later. I'm really good at cursing home teams. Cracking stuff, Lloyd. Once again, thank you very much. May your arrows be green. Same to all the viewers out there. Have a cracking game week, and we'll be back next week for game week 36, which is the last regular game week until the grand finale, game week 38, where all matches are kicked off simultaneously. Until next week, we'll catch you on the other side. Cheerio.